For this meeting agenda, we will discuss the following items: learning objectives, building a positive relationship, what are behaviors, what is conflict, what is de-escalation, the behavior model, de-escalation strategies, and positioning in vehicle. Now, without further ado, I will turn the mic to Heather, who will take it away and introduce herself. Heather, it's all yours.
All right, thank you, Hezekias. Good morning. My name is Heather Peralta. I will be your presenter for today. Little about myself. Professionally, I am a lead Article 9 and prevention and support instructor for the state of Arizona. Article 9, what that is, it's a prerequisite of the state of Arizona for anyone that will be providing services for an individual through the Division of Developmental Disabilities. It also deals with managing inappropriate behaviors without the violation of the rights of the individuals that we support. And prevention and support, this is a training that teaches the staff that work under the DDD on how to recognize when a challenging behavior may occur and how to utilize least restrictive options and use de-escalation strategies. We also talk about in that class what a behavior emergency is, what emergency physical intervention techniques are approved in the instance that least restrictive methods, if they're not working. The main focus of prevention and support is teaching positive replacement behaviors to get the need met. Now, I have been supporting folks who have developmental disabilities now for 22 years. I've worked for Gompers over 18 of those years and have been the staff guidance trainer for over 15 of those years here. For those of you that have not heard of Gompers, we are a facility that is committed to serving adults who have developmental disabilities. We have 2 DTA programs, and what that is day training for adults where we teach habilitation goals like life skills, social skills, independence, community involvement, things of that nature. Now, Gompers also offers job training and employment placement. We serve over 250 adults who have special needs. I do want to take this time and thank you for being here today and allowing me to join to share some tips on preventing and de-escalation of inappropriate or dangerous behaviors in the vehicle. So we'll go ahead and get started. I see we've got the first slide up for learning objectives. So today's learning objectives, if we think about it, human emotion at times of extreme stress can seem unpredictable. Having to operate a vehicle while managing conflict only make things harder. So today's workshop is going to focus on how to proactively assist individuals who have developmental disabilities and challenging behaviors before they're nearing or in a behavioral emergency. We will identify what a behavior truly is, how to determine why a behavior occurs, so that's the function. We will discuss how to identify the sequence of behavior, which is the behavioral model, the antecedent, precursor, behavior, calm down, and consequences. These are also known as the APBCCs. And we will discuss tips on how personal space, body language, listening skills can help effectively de-escalate the disruptive behavior of those on your vehicle. Today's class will give you the basic tools to prevent behavioral emergencies. Throughout this workshop, we will be practicing with specific tools that you may have available for you as a driver, including ways to build relationships and proactively support someone who may display a challenging behavior. So let's go ahead and get started with building a positive relationship with the individuals that we transport. Okay, how you look and handle yourself when you are talking to a passenger in combination with your tone of voice, choice of words can make a critical difference in trying to calm an angry or upset passenger. But let's start from the beginning, okay, with relationship builders. When we first meet a new person in any area of our lives, we do a lot of different things to build positive relationships. So let's talk about some of the things that we can do to build a positive relationship with the people that you transport. The first one that's going to be here on our list is just a first impression. You know, having a good first impression. Studies show that the first impressions, they are formed within the first seconds of any interaction. That first impression is communicated to your passengers based on your appearance, your body language, your demeanor, and your mannerisms. A smile first thing in the morning, or, you know, as they're getting on the van or getting off the van in the afternoon, it does go a long way paired with a warm greeting. So let's go ahead and talk about that. Now, some of you in this training may have been transporting the same person for a while now and have had the opportunity to gain some information about them. However, some of you in this workshop today will be picking up different passengers every day. So on the next slide, we're going to see that greeting, just having that warm personal greeting. Greeting passengers with a warm and confident smile can put both you and the passenger at ease. So say hello, you know, it's good to see you. Good morning. How are you? If you know the person's name, you may even add that personal touch to the greeting, such as good morning, Mr. Peterson. If you're meeting them for the first time, introduce yourself. You may ask them their name. Another thing to keep in mind is you may even ask them if they have a nickname, okay, that they prefer. For example, Robert may prefer to be called Bob. Just make sure to make a note of that to use next time to show them that you do care and are listening to what they're telling you. Remembering details about the person is also a good way to build a positive relationship with someone. Okay. Next on the list, another way to build a positive relationship is eye contact. Eye contact is the most fundamental way to create a connection with a person. Now, eye contact, this is a form of body language, which is important during communication. When you keep eye contact with the person that you're talking to, it indicates that you are focused and paying attention. It means that you are listening to what the person has to say. Now, making eye contact might also help you identify a passenger who may be inclined to be disruptive, and it's a way to let your passengers know that you are watching what is going on within the transit vehicle. It is important to note, though, that avoidance of eye contact may be a characteristic behavior of a person who has ADHD, or if they're on the autistic spectrum, they may have difficult time making eye contact. It may look as if they're ignoring you, but some people find making eye contact difficult. So this is just another good example as to why getting to know the person, it's very important. Main thing here is we never want to force, eye contact. We just want to have that understanding, that empathy. Okay. Next slide, show patience. We never want to rush the individual, okay? We have to have that understanding that some of the folks that we transport, they may have a cognitive disability or even a physical limitation. It may take them some time to process what is being requested. They may need some time to put their thoughts into action. So give them some time. If you are speaking with a person who maybe uses a communication device and you ask them a question, for example, you ask them, what did you do this weekend? Again, they have to process that question. What did I do this weekend? Then they have to formulate an answer, and then they have to navigate through that system to type in what they want to say. Now, a mistake that people sometimes make is finishing their sentences. So if you are speaking with someone who uses a device or stutters, we just want to make sure that we're not finishing the individual sentence, because when we do that, it gives off the idea that we don't have the time to wait for them to finish. And honestly, that could make them shut down, basically just out of frustration. We never want the person to feel rushed, okay? It may trigger that escalation, and it does interrupt communication. Set expectations. This is another way that we can start, getting to know the individual and building those relationships. A good way to do that is to explain some of the rules on the vehicle. So we have here on this slide some examples of the rules that you may use to announce before leaving the pickup spot. The first one on the list is no jumping or rocking on the vehicle. Feet must remain on the floor. Keep hands to yourself. Keep arms and hands inside the window. Keep seatbelts fastened until you arrive at your destination. Stay seated until the driver gives you permission to unbuckle. Belongings need to be out of the aisle. Keep a calm voice during transport. Now, depending on your agency, you may even let them know some specific rules. Maybe there's no eating or drinking other than water on the vehicle, if that's a rule that your agency has in place. And then the last one we have on the list there is if there is a rider staff, they should be seated in the center of the van. This is the person who is responsible for monitoring and interacting with the passengers. A good rule of thumb is just to have the rules posted somewhere in the vehicle that's visible. Next on the list, we're going to have praise the individual. Another relationship builder. Praise individuals for appropriate things that they do. Now, there are many ways that you can show appreciation. Okay, a high five, knuckle bump, thumbs up, way to go, I'm proud of you, excellent, even a thank you. That's a great way to acknowledge a job well done. It is important to be specific about what you are praising. So thank you for wearing your seatbelt. I appreciate that. Or I noticed that you took trash out of the van with you yesterday. Thank you. That's a huge help. Now, if they like that praise, 9 chances out of 10, they're going to want it again and display that same appropriate behavior. Real quick, let me tell you a quick way that I learned this, and I'm going to just go ahead and say the hard way. So 23 years ago, when I first started out in this field, I was working with a young lady and she was eating her lunch. She had her plate of spaghetti. Well, when she was done, okay, and when I say she's done, there was still spaghetti on her plate. Well, anyway, when she was done, she knocked the plate off the table. I was like, all right, welcome to the field, So anyway, we went to the restroom, cleaned up a little bit because there was spaghetti sauce everywhere, including on me. Well, anyway, after she was done washing her hands, I said, thank you. The next day, she's at the lunch table and she has that same behavior of knocking the plate off the table. So I was like, what's going on? We talked about this. What's going on? She says to me, she goes, well, Heather, yesterday when I did this, you said thank you. I was like, yeah, you're right. I did. So she basically called me out because she was 100% correct. I was not specific on what I was thanking her for. She took it as thank you for knocking the plate off the table. What I should have said was thank you for washing your hands, but I was not specific. So from that moment on, I've always been very specific on what I'm praising them for. So again, if they like that praise, hopefully they're going to do it again. Okay. Praise builds self-confidence and self-esteem. Don't forget to praise attempts. Even if they're unsuccessful, we want to praise the attempts that they're making to reach the goal. Use the individual's name. This one's huge as well when you're praising them because people like to hear their name. Okay. Especially when it's paired with positivity for a job well done. It feels good to just be acknowledged. Okay, so those are just some tips that we have here. Let's go ahead and flip over. We're going to flip to the next slide. We're going to talk about building relationships through communication. It says communication is a way of relaying information to others that have a need to know. Communication should be clear and concise in order to get a visual picture of that message. When communicating with others, we must also take into consideration who we're speaking with and what is the best way to communicate with that person to keep them engaged. Now, we have to understand not all people communicate in the same manner. So let's talk about that. In the following section here, what we're going to focus on is some important components and aspects of communication. But first, let's define the difference between verbal and nonverbal communication. Verbal communication. This is using speech or spoken word to exchange information, emotions, and thoughts. Nonverbal communication. This is conveying and exchanging messages without the use of spoken words. So I'm going to open this up for discussion, and then we'll look at the next slide to elaborate a little bit. I'm going to ask if you guys can enter your answers in the chat. So can I have some examples of some verbal and nonverbal ways that we communicate? And Hezekiah, if you can go ahead and let me know what they say.
All right, Heather, the responses are coming in. Valerie Anderson said talking. Jacqueline Garcia said body language. Mahara said facial expressions. Doreen, a smile. Irvina said pointing. Let's see what else. Sounds. Active listening, nodding with empathy. Yes, that's all we've got.
Okay, thank you. I do appreciate those
Oh,
answers.
Courtney said hand signals.
Very good. Thank you. So what I want to go over, if we can go ahead and look on the next slide here. Here are some examples that, a few of you mentioned, but here's a few more that we may not have thought of. So the first one on the list there is sign language. Now, it's not in our job description to be fluent in sign, but knowing some of the basic signs can really be helpful to someone who speaks through sign language. So I don't see anybody that's actually on video, but if there is anyone that maybe knows these answers or would like to get on video to show some examples of some signs, if you have that information. So does anybody in here know how to sign hello? I don't know if anybody is going to want to get on video for it. Let's see. Oh, okay. There we go. There we go. Yeah. So you can do it with the one or the two hands. So just a hello. Does anyone know how to sign good morning? Good. Yep. That's good. And then morning. Very good. I'm noticing that there, and that's Crystal. So yeah, so we've got good. And then morning. I don't know if you guys can see me here. Yep. Going up. Like you can't see me.
No, your arm placement is incorrect. Your non-dominant hand needs to be on top of your
on top.
arm. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So I was just trying to see if I was able to be seen. So yeah. So and then it's the horizon. So it's good morning. Do you know how to sign pain? Yep. There you go. So if it's up here, it's a headache. If it's down here, seems like you're fairly fluent. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm from Valley Center of the Deaf.
Yes. Right on. I love it. I love it. So getting to know some of those basic signs. What about help? Yep. That's help you, help me, help everyone. Very good. Very good. Let's see. What are some other, thank you. Thank you. Good, good. Bathroom. Yep. Bathroom. Good, good. Yes. Yes. How about no? Their favorite? Nope, they do it right in your face. No. All right. So I appreciate that, Crystal. So yeah, the bottom line here is getting to know some of the basic signs. It can definitely help when communicating with someone who speaks through sign language. Now, I always say if anyone is ever interested in learning sign, there are apps on the phones that you can go and you can download. Also, GCC also has a really good program. It's the American Sign Language 101. It's just an introductory course that provides instruction of deafness, deaf culture, and language based off of language that's used by the deaf community. So, like I said, there's different things that you guys could look into. There's this thing called the library as well. I don't know if people are still utilizing the library, but they do have a lot of educational books to to teach. The next one that we have here on the list for different communication patterns is going to be writing. Emails, texting. So with writing, emails, and texting, those I feel can fall under both verbal and nonverbal. It's an example of written verbal communication. So if you're talking, words and putting them on paper to communicate, like I said, it could kind of be a little bit of both. The next one on the list is pecs and pictures. Even posters at the movie theater tells us what movies are coming out. That's communication. Clothing, even what we're wearing, police officers wear a uniform, doctors wear uniforms. Even you may wear a uniform to represent the company that you work for. We communicate through colors and lights. When you're driving the van and the light turns red, that's communicating, stop. We've got the flashing lights on the fire alarms. Not only is it loud, but it also flashes the light for folks who are deaf. They know that there's an emergency. So we have the colors, we have the lights. I know body language was one that was mentioned. Eye contact, that's a part of that body language, or lack thereof. An eye roll is a form of communication. If you can kind of put yourself in this position here, if you maybe are at a party with a significant other and you're ready to go, you kind of look over at your partner and kind of give that facial expression with your eyes, just saying, I'm ready to go. That's communication. Hand movements, gestures. I know I heard that one as well. Pointing, if you want the person in the van to maybe lower their voice because you're trying to concentrate on the road and everything, instead of yelling to everyone on the vehicle, you could do like a gesture, maybe one of those or one of these, just to kind of give that that command that you're asking for them to kind of lower their voice. Let's see, other hand gestures. If you want the person to come here, one of these. For those of you that are basketball fans, you may remember this one. No. What was that, Mutombo? He was back in the day, but yeah, it always kind of reminds me of that. The way you're standing, the way that you're sitting is a form of communication. If you're standing with your arms, folded, or your fists clenched, or if the person is sitting very slouchy, leaning, those types of body movements is a form of communication. Facial expressions, that was another one that we heard. I mean, if you're a parent, the look that you give your child when they're acting up, that's communicating, better knock it off, let's see, smile, that may indicate that they're happy, but we never want to assume because someone is smiling that they're happy. Okay. There could be people who are smiling, but it could be a very condescending smile. So we never want to assume, but in general, that's usually what it means, but not always. The next one on the list is the body art I have on there, tattoos. I have a friend of mine who has epilepsy. Now, instead of getting the medical ID on her wrist, she actually had it tattooed that she has epilepsy. That's communication. Next slide. Communication devices should be the next one. Yes, okay. So communication devices, the short answer here on what that is, it's just equipment that people use to communicate without using that verbal speech. Silence, yes, silence is a form of communication. We know that sometimes silence speaks louder than words. If someone shuts down, walks out of the room, that is communicating something. The next one on the list is speech. We heard that one, but even our tone of voice, yelling, whispering, anything of that nature. Sounds, I know we heard that one as well in the chat. So sounds, fire alarm, okay, communicates we need to evacuate. You're driving in the vehicle, someone honks their horn, that's communication. Police sirens. If you have someone in your vehicle that's non-speaking, okay, they may hit the window or clap their hands just to make a noise, maybe just to get your attention. Maybe they need some help with something and they're not verbally able to get your attention in that way, so they make a noise. Laughing, crying, yes, those are forms. Music is another one that I have on that list. Yes, people do communicate through their music. I'll be honest with you, that's how I found out that Whitney Houston would always love me. She sang it to me. Now, Dolly Parton, she sang it to me first, but I don't know, I really just really believed it when, you know, Miss Houston belted it out to me. Okay. So we just talked about how to build a positive relationship and how people communicate. So the next thing I'd like to discuss are just some barriers to communication. So these are some examples that could damage the relationship that you're trying to build with the individual. So on the next slide, we're going to see some things, some examples of phrases that we shouldn't use. The first one on the list, number one, is ordering or using commands. So a command could be, you have to. Well, first off, disability or not, no one likes to be told what to do. You have to sit there because I said so, or you have to calm down. When you tell someone to calm down, they actually may perceive it as an order, basically telling them how to feel in this situation. Now, we have to understand that our emotions, they belong to us. Telling someone how they should be feeling is not the same as validating them. And actually, we will get more into detail on that later on in this workshop. The second one that we have on the list is warning, threatening. You better not. Well, you better not touch that window or I'm not taking you home. Really? Come on, that's a threat. The bottom line with threats is that if you cannot follow through with what you just said, don't even say it. You know, we are trying to build a positive rapport with the person, and we're trying to build trust. We cannot build trust if we're lying to them or using threats. So again, if you can't follow through, don't even say it. Advising, giving a solution. This one here, it starts out with the example, why don't you? We don't always want to give them all the solutions to their problems. Instead, we want to try to help guide them to try to problem solve for themselves. You know, you don't want to use like judgmental statements such as you should or you shouldn't. That may just make the passenger feel shamed or inadequate and possibly even angrier. Like I said, we don't always want to problem solve for them. We want to teach them how to come up with solutions on their own. Now, granted, there are some times where we do have to step in. I get that. But for the most part, let's teach them. Let's see, the fourth one on the list is evaluating or blaming. You're wrong. I mean, come on, telling someone that they're wrong will surely not open up communication. In most cases, it's going to cause the person to shut down or fight harder to prove that they're right, which is going to lead to yelling. So we don't want to blame the person. We don't want to speak to them sarcastically or treat them unintelligent. The next one on the list is praising and agreeing you're right. Sometimes people do this in a very condescending tone just to make the other person stop talking, which is definitely a barrier to communication. You ever be in a conversation like that and the person's like, yeah, you're right, knowing darn well they don't really believe what they just said. They're just trying to get you to stop, you know. The next one on the list, questioning and probing, why did you? So coming into an environment and starting off the sentence with, why did you? Okay, why did you? Well, that one right there, it just leads to accusing without understanding the situation first. You know, why did you get on the van so angry? Well, that might not even have been the emotion that they were feeling at that time. It could have been frustration, which is definitely very different. Or another example could be, why did you put your backpack in the middle of the aisle? You know, people have to walk there. Well, maybe the backpack started on the seat, but maybe fell onto the aisle. So again, using statements like, why did you, before knowing the facts, it kind of sounds like you're accusing them of something, and they may just get defensive and possibly more out of control. The last one that we have on the list there is withdrawing or, you know, saying things like, just forget it. No, talk to the hand. We're done. You know, using words like that. Or saying you don't have time. This is a huge barrier to communication. The person may not feel that they can open up to you, and it may lead them to display challenging behavior to communicate those feelings. Okay. Also, avoid saying things like, I understand, or I know what you're feeling. Statements like this may further anger the passenger because they don't feel in a lot of cases that you generally understand their circumstance. Now, later we are going to discuss some ideas on what we can do instead. Now, before we jump into what to do during the challenging behavior in the vehicle, I want to start off with just discussing what are behaviors. So that's where I want to start this off. The reason I like to start off with what are behaviors is, especially in the field that I work in here, working with folks who have developmental and intellectual disabilities, when a lot of the staff come in, when we think of behavior, we tend to think of things like hitting, kicking, pinching, biting, pulling hair, grabbing, those types of things. Now, yes, those are considered behavior, but in reality, behavior is anything an individual does that you can see or hear and count the number of times or the length of time that the individual does the behavior. So in other words, a behavior is an action. Behavior equals communication. This is something I actually teach 14 different classes here at my agency, and it seems like almost every single class that I teach, that's something that we talk about. Behavior equaling communication. So we have to ask ourselves, what could the individual be communicating? Wants, needs, frustration. Ultimately, all behavior is an attempt to get something or to get away from something. Excuse me. So, where's my voice going? Give me 1 second. All right, and we're back. How do we decide what behaviors are good and which are bad? Okay, this is going to be on the next slide. If we think about it, behaviors are not inherently good or bad. An individual's behavior may be getting them what they want or need in the only way that they know how to get it. Now, a behavior is generally considered good or bad based on our own impression of that behavior. Our impressions of behaviors, they're shaped by a variety of influences. Now, these impressions, they're often displayed in our judgment of others. We can get the next slide, please. Next one, please. Perfect. All right. Determining if a behavior is appropriate. We first must ask ourselves, why are we calling the behavior inappropriate? Is it simply because it goes against our own values and therefore we have placed a judgment on that behavior? Or does it truly harm another or interfere significantly in their ability to function in the environment? So really, we don't want to judge behavior as good or bad. Okay, it's something that someone does to communicate or get a need met. And the way that we're looking at this, it's not good or bad. It's something they do that is appropriate or inappropriate. Okay, I mean, I would never tell a parent that their kid was bad today on the vehicle. That's not, as a parent, that's not something that that's not verbiage I would want to hear. They were bad today. So that's when we kind of go back and think about it. Getting a need met either in an appropriate way or an inappropriate way, okay? Everyone uses behavior to get wants and needs met. Behavior can be challenging. It can also be positive. It can be rewarding, disruptive, or dangerous. So I'm going to open up the chat again, please. And I just want to have a little discussion. I want to talk about yelling. So I'm going to ask you this first. Is yelling an appropriate behavior or an inappropriate behavior?
All right, Heather. So we have some people saying it's inappropriate. Some people said both.
All right. For those that said both, I agree with you. Okay. It really depends on why they're yelling, where they are when they're yelling. So I want to keep this discussion going. Can you guys give me some examples of appropriate times, like almost times that it's expected to yell. When is it totally okay to yell?
All right. Somebody said in an emergency, in a fire, when there is danger, hearing disability, sporting events. Yes, that's all we got.
Okay, I appreciate those responses. So some appropriate times on a playground. Yeah, the kids are outside at recess. Absolutely. That's the time to be, you know, having a good time, yelling, playing, all that good stuff. If you need help, so I heard if there's like an emergency, if there's fire, any type of danger, absolutely. Some people yell when they're watching horror movies, you know. How about this one? When you're in pain. I truly believe the only reason we have a pinky toe is to catch it on the corners of desks. So when that happens, oh yeah, absolutely. I'm yelling out. Okay. If, like I said, if you're in pain, if you've ever ridden a roller coaster, heck yeah, you're yelling out. If you're playing bingo and you get a bingo, you're going to yell out. I heard at a sports arena, you know, I know during the Super Bowl, I'm sitting there yelling at the TV. They can't hear me, but I don't know. It's just fun. We're having a good time. Concerts, we sing really loud, we yell, we have a good time. So again, I want to thank you for those answers that you guys gave me, because you're absolutely right. It could be both. So let's keep it going. Let's talk about some inappropriate times to yell. When is it not okay?
Right, you can put that in the chat. We have one chat response in here so far, and it says I'm doing quiet time.
Okay, I'll take it.
When the yelling is accompanied with anger, and it's not okay.
Okay, okay. Other settings. Hope I see another one.
If it's disruptive.
Okay, okay. Library. That would be a setting where it would be definitely disruptive. In the classroom is not the appropriate time to yell. You know, if you're driving the vehicle and someone cuts you off in traffic, now the company vehicle, okay, I can't tell you how to be in your own personal car, but in the company vehicle, yelling at that other driver, that's not appropriate behavior, because we know that could lead to so many other things. Plus, most of us have the phone number right there on our vehicles. So you guys know, one little yell or something like that, people are calling in. So just kind of keeping your cool, gripping the steering wheel 10 and 2, you just have a great day. Okay. Another reason why we don't want to yell in the van is because the members in the back, we're role models. You know, if we're yelling at them, then they're yelling, and, you know, so those would be some inappropriate times. Let's say you're playing bingo and you don't have a bingo and you yell out, you're going to upset a few people in that facility. Other inappropriate times, I mean, we could go on and on. If the baby's asleep, okay, parents are always telling the other siblings, keep your voice down, the baby's asleep. In my house, it's if I'm asleep, my son better, he knows, keep your voice down, you know. So just some different ideas as to appropriate versus inappropriate. Okay. Everybody exhibits behavior, and this cycle that we're about to discuss, it applies to everyone. Okay. So providing support means that we do have a responsibility to figure out what someone is communicating. So if someone is communicating in a way that puts themselves or others in danger, we have the opportunity to teach new ways to communicate. While before a challenging behavior is a great time for teaching, during the challenging behavior is not the time for teaching. Okay, this is the time to make sure everyone is safe. All right, now that we know what behavior is, on the next slide here, we're going to talk about conflict and de-escalation. So conflict, what this is, it's a disagreement in which the people involved see a threat to their needs, interests, or concerns. A key element of conflict is the idea that each person more than likely has a different perception of the situation than the other person has. The key is to work out the differences with your passengers before the situation escalates to a more difficult or dangerous encounter. The next slide, we're going to define de-escalation. De-escalation, this is when we effectively communicate to calm a passenger who is angry, out of control, or disturbed. De-escalation strategies can reduce the possibility of violence once the conflict begins to intensify or escalate. Trying to get in there beforehand. Okay, so next up, we're going to talk about something that we like to call the behavioral model. This is basically the who, what, when, where, and how often something is happening. This is something we use to help determine how to recognize inappropriate behavior before it starts and what we can do to help de-escalate the situation. So we're going to jump right into this behavioral model. Earlier, we said that every behavior serves a purpose. So next up, we're going to talk about some possible causes, purpose, function of behavior. Behavior occurs for a reason. Everything we do is driven by a need. All behavior satisfies a need. However, not all needs are satisfied in an appropriate manner. In order to teach individuals how to get their needs met in an appropriate manner, we first must determine the function or the purpose of that behavior. So we're going to go ahead and discuss the sequence of behavior. Okay, so this model here, it shows the behavioral cycle as it takes place for all individuals. Our goal is to recognize and teach the individuals to stop the behaviors that are considered inappropriate from occurring. Now, this can be accomplished by developing a relationship with the person that consists of, trust and fondness. Developing a relationship will allow you to recognize the individual's antecedents, precursors, and the payoffs. When we begin to understand the function of the behavior, we can give the individual alternative behaviors that will allow them to receive the result that they're pursuing, but more in a more appropriate way. So we're going to go ahead and we are going to break down this model, okay, starting with the antecedent. So the antecedent. If you notice, okay, that behavioral model, it went from left to right, okay, starting with the top left, which was the antecedent. Now, that is part of the before stage of the model. When we're talking about before, basically what it means is before the behavior occurs. So that's the antecedent. It is something that happens to or around or even within the individual. They cause the behavior to occur. It sets the behavior in motion. Everyone has antecedents to behavior. We don't do things for nothing. There is always a reason why we do what we do. Now, it may not always be obvious as to why they're displaying the behavior, but guarantee there is a trigger, okay? Now, when it comes to these antecedents, they can either be internal, which is like inside the body, something going on inside that could trigger the behavior. They can also be external, but I want to start off talking about some internal antecedents. Okay, again, inside the body that triggers behavior. So the first one on the list there is hungry. That is called hangry, and that is a thing. Have you ever met someone who gets irritable when they're hungry? If you haven't, hi, my name's Heather. That's me. Okay. I am just not the same person when I'm hungry. Or those of you here, we can go kind of back through memory lane. If you guys remember the commercials, the Snickers commercials that just basically said, you're not you when you're hungry. I think that is one of the realest commercials because it's just so true. The next one on the list is fatigue. So just like when we're hungry, we may act different when we're tired. Sleep deprivation, it leaves your brain exhausted, so it can't perform its duties very well. Plus, lack of sleep can result in mood and behavior problems. And for people who already struggle with behavioral health problems, inadequate sleep can actually make the situations worse. The next one on the list, medication or medication side effects. So maybe mom gives the person a Benadryl for their allergies before they get on your van. Well, the person falls asleep. Okay, why did they fall asleep? Well, because the side effect of Benadryl is the sleepiness. It's just a side effect. So sleep is the behavior, that's the action. Why are they sleeping? Well, medication. Let's see, some other examples. Could be a past memory that upsets them. It could be past trauma. Antecedents can also be internal emotions. Anger, sadness, frustration, even happy can trigger a behavior. You know, for example, if the person is starting to show signs of frustration, maybe when they're putting on their seatbelt, well, here's some examples and some things that you could do. Give them praise for those attempts, reassure the individual, ask them to take a break. You know I get frustrated with things, and there's times when I just have to just take a minute and take that break. Usually frustration occurs when the person perceives that they're unsuccessful or something. So that's kind of what triggers that frustration in a lot of cases. Other examples of internal mental health, then we've got those individuals and the passengers that are experiencing mental health issues or cognitive decline. And these issues can influence how they react to others. Things like depression, anxiety, those can be triggers to behavior. The next one is biomedical. Okay, medical factors like an ear infection, stomach ache, headache, oversensitivity to certain sounds can be significant reasons why we see some of these, behaviors. I'll say, the one here, lack of communication skills. This is huge. Many times, if an individual does not have the skills or knowledge of how to communicate their needs in a socially acceptable manner, that's when their communication pattern may rely on negative patterns to get the needs met. This is what we then call inappropriate behaviors. There are a lot of things in this world that we take for granted, and for some, it's our voice. Just imagine not being able to verbally get that need met. Just imagine the frustration that it could cause. Now, we've also got other examples as far as stress passengers. Many people, they are under a great deal of stress. It could be due to their job, their health, or some situation at home. There are many reasons. However, as a driver, there's no way for you to know who may be under stress, but stress can lead people to overreact and suddenly become aggressive at the slightest thing. The next one on the list is boredom. Okay, this is another internal. If the individual has no stimulation or activities, well, then they're going to create their own out of boredom. If you can think of the passenger, if you're noticing signs that maybe they are getting bored, offer them an activity, like I Spy, or engage them in conversation, or ask them if they want to listen to some music. You know what I mean? For example, like me, when I'm bored, I know personally, I do not make the best decisions when I'm bored. Okay. If I am home with nothing to do, I'm going to go shopping, or, just get on Amazon, put some things in the cart, knowing darn well, I have not paid my phone bill yet. We do not make great decisions when we're just bored. Okay. So now I don't have the phone bill money because I was bored. You know what I mean? So it's the same. They say the same thing too with kids, how do they say this? They say if it's really loud in the house, the kids are fine. But then when they get quiet, they're up to something. It's like they're bored. They're trying to find something to do. So it kind of goes hand in hand with that too, as far as like raising kids. Another reason that behavior may occur. Now I'm actually going to spend quite some time on this one, because this is another big reason why we see a lot of inappropriate behaviors, and it's to gain attention. Now, if you think about it, social contact is a need of everyone, okay? If an individual is not getting attention from others for being appropriate, that's when they may display inappropriate behaviors. After all, some believe that negative attention is better than no attention at all. Experience has taught that individual that he or she is most worthy of a staff or parent's time and energy when using poor behaviors. The reason I say that is because even in traditional parenting methods, you often see the emphasis placed on negative behavior. I'm going to read you a quote from Dr. Howard Glasser. He says, "Some children simply form an impression based on their experiences and observations that they get more out of people, bigger reactions, more animation and emotion and excitement when things are going wrong. Our responses to positive things are relatively low key in terms of the energy that we radiate. The child feels relatively invisible for the good things that they do and starts to feel more successful when they involve us in reaction to the negativity." I mean, if you're a parent or caregiver yourself, think about the times when you gave the person the most attention. Was it when they were acting out or when they had done something well or that pleased you? Focusing on the negative behavior often has that effect of reinforcing that behavior. Reinforcing a behavior means that we are increasing the likelihood that that behavior will present itself again. Yes, we must still address the inappropriate behavior when they occur. I know that. But we should be teaching and praising the behaviors that you want to see happen more than you're focusing on the inappropriate behavior. Okay. Think about it in your terms here. Think about when your supervisor gives you a lot of positive feedback about your job performance. You know what generally happens? You want to continue on that route. It's nice to hear when we're doing something right, opposed to always hearing what you messed up on. And it goes the same for, I mean, really any human being. I'm going to give you one more example before we move on, because this one kind of relates to, you know, home life, things like that. So for those of you in this workshop today, if you're a parent, okay, even if you have nieces and nephews, you've heard this conversation. So the child comes home from school and just kind of kicks their shoes off, right? It kind of goes and plays. Well, the next morning when we're looking for the shoes, where are your shoes? I don't know. Well, here's one, but where's the other one? I don't know, right? They can never find their shoes in the morning. It's like a thing that everyone has to go through at least once in their life. So the bottom line is, though, we get angry, we get frustrated, we're running late. Well, come on, find your shoes. Go get off the couch, go look for your shoes. Well, if you would have put them back yesterday, like I told you to, we wouldn't be in this situation, right? We're yelling, we're frustrated, this is happening. Now, the one time that they come home from school and they actually put their shoes in a little cubby or wherever you keep them, we don't say anything. We don't acknowledge it, okay? So it seems like we're giving so much attention when it's the things that we don't want to see. Why did you do that? No, get down, stop chasing the dog. We're always on them when they're doing something inappropriate. What we're saying here is, yes, we have to address those things. However, we still want to pay attention. We want to feed the things that we want to see repeated. So they put their shoes away. When they got off school, acknowledge it. Hey, you know, I noticed you put your shoes away. Awesome job. Thank you. So tomorrow we're going to be able to find them. We're going to be out the door. So acknowledge the things you want to see repeated. Okay. I always like to share that one in all my classes, just because that one kind of hits home, you know, as an example, as, you know, as far as the appropriate behavior that we want to see. Okay. Next up, I want to talk about some examples of external causes of behavior. So the first one, we've got noise level. There could be too many people around. I always say this, if we know that the person doesn't like to be around a lot of people, are we going to take them shopping on December 23rd? No, we're going to be proactive. We're going to avoid that because we know what they don't like. It could be lighting. It could be that the driver was late. It could even be smells, okay? Think about the time when maybe you're out in the community and someone walks past you and they're wearing a cologne or a perfume that maybe someone that you once knew was wearing. So when you smell that, it kind of triggers a memory. Maybe it's a good memory, maybe it's a not so good memory, okay? So yeah, even a smell could trigger behavior. The next one on the list is routine change. example, just having a different driver. Change is different for many people, especially if you're picking up someone who is very routine oriented. For example, someone who maybe has autism, they may have difficulty with change in routine, and that may trigger a behavior. So just communicate with them on who you are and why you're there. As a driver of someone who transports different people every day, I mean, really, there's no way for you to know what the person's antecedents may be. Even if you do have the same set of passengers every day, it can be hard to recognize why someone is upset. Just understand there's a reason for it, okay? It could be the weather outside. Some people get a little more gloomy when it's like raining and storming outside. Weather, summer, the heat. Road rage goes up in the summer just because it's so hot. It could be the temperature in the van. There's so many reasons, as to why people have these types of behaviors, the reason why they make the choices that they do. Okay. Next slide, we're going to go ahead, continuing on with the model. We're going to discuss the precursors. Okay. Now, the precursors are defined as cues, warning that the behavior is about to occur. Some people think of them as like a mini behavior. Precursors are also part of the before stage. And honestly, precursors are the last opportunity to stop that behavior, to prevent that behavior from happening. Okay. So questions that we ask ourselves: what did they do or say right before the behavior? Were there little mini behaviors like rocking, pacing, cursing, staring, body language change, facial expression change? Maybe they're shaking, like pacing, all kinds of different things. Be aware of these signs when you're interacting with your passengers. I mean, does their voice tone change? Does it increase in volume? Do they get quiet? Are they clenching their fist? Are they tightening or untightening their jaw? Do they refuse to make eye contact with you when they were before? Okay, if they're looking down, if they've lowered their body, their breathing may have changed. Maybe they're breathing really heavy. These can all be warning signs that an inappropriate behavior is about to occur. Okay. So we've gone over the possible causes of behavior, and that list was short. Okay. The list can go on and on, to be honest with you guys, but we went over some of those possible causes of behavior. We now just went over some of those warnings that happen right before the behavior. So the next part of the behavioral cycle that we're going to look at are behaviors. That's that action that we were talking about earlier. Okay. We already kind of defined it a little bit, but now we're just going to elaborate a little bit more. Okay. Can we go to the next slide for behavior? Perfect. So we mentioned this earlier. This is just a little review. The behavior is observable and measurable. This means that you can either see or hear it. You can also count or measure, like how long did this go on? A behavior has a starting point and a stopping point, okay? Some of those behaviors that we can mention here, of course, the hitting, the kicking, pulling hair, running, sitting, using the telephone. Grammatically, behaviors are almost action verbs, okay? One thing to remember is, again, all behavior is communication. It serves a purpose. We don't do things for nothing, okay? Everyone displays behavior, all right? So we want to look at what they are attempting to get or do. What are they trying to tell us through their behavior? So I have a pen right here, okay? Let's say, well, I'll actually do it. It's an action. This is so weird on Zoom. So I threw the pen. Was that a behavior?
I got the people in the chat saying yes, it was.
Absolutely. It was an action. So for those of you that have me on video, you saw me throw it. Some of you, if it was really quiet, you heard it hit the floor. You can measure how far I threw it. Well, I can anyway. So the bottom line is it is an action. Now, we just got done saying that all behavior is communication. Okay. I'm trying to get something met, right? So for this workshop right now, I want you guys to be honest as to why. Tell me, in this workshop, why did I throw the pen?
Because you're training us.
Okay. It was
Somebody's asking if you're hungry.
okay. I could eat. I could always eat.
For
But
demonstration.
Am I frustrated? So
No,
the
for
thing.
demonstration.
Oh, a demonstration. Okay, perfect. I heard frustration. Yeah, no, that's absolutely correct. I was just demonstrating what a behavior looks like. That's the only reason why I threw it. That's it. Okay, that was the purpose. Now, if I was writing something down and maybe the pen ran out of ink, my behavior could be throwing it down because it's out of ink. But that wasn't the case. It was just demonstrating that that was an action. You know, even us in this workshop, right? We're all behaving right now. And there is a reason that everyone is here. I'm hoping that majority of you here are here to gain some knowledge, you know, maybe brush up on some stuff that maybe you've already, you know, learned. But the fact is, there's a reason you're here in this workshop. There's a reason I'm here. There's reason behind all behavior. Okay. Like I said, we don't do things for just nothing. All right. So going back to the previous conversation that we had earlier about behavior being appropriate or inappropriate. Again, we have to get some more information. So the behavior of kicking, you know, we're thinking, is it appropriate or is it inappropriate? Inappropriate. Well, if they're kicking a soccer ball during a game, that's fine. But if they're kicking someone, you know, especially out of anger or frustration, that's inappropriate, you know. We just have to have that understanding as to why they're doing it before we can judge it, honestly. Now, on the next slide here, we're going to talk about the calm down period. Now, the calm down can be classified as part of the after stage, but I'm going to talk more on that later. This is the period for the individual to come back into control. It's also known as the de-escalation period. Now, we teach things to help understand emotions, right? Like what I teach my son, you know, anger, that's okay. It's okay to be angry. It's a healthy emotion, right? Everyone gets angry. However, what some people do as a result of that anger, that's when it's not okay. You know, if they're hurting themselves, hurting others, you know, damaging property, those would be inappropriate responses to the emotion within. Okay. The calm down period, this is a good time to teach relaxation strategies, you know, taking a deep breath, counting to 10, listening to music. Once the individual is calm, you know, or starting to calm, this is a good time to try to process what just occurred, what happened. Okay, when we process, we ask questions like, why did this happen? How could have it been prevented? And how will the individual react next time that this occurs? Now, this would be a good time to teach other ways to handle the situation. Okay, other alternatives outside of hurting themselves, others, or, you know, punching a hole in the wall or whatever the behavior is. The focus should be on teaching that alternative behavior, replacing an inappropriate behavior with a more positive way to get the need met. Okay. All right. So the final section of the behavioral model is going to be the consequence stage. Okay. This is also known as the result or the payoff. So if we could get to the next slide, please. Awesome. All right. So the result or the payoff. Okay. What happens to the individual, or what do they get after the behavior is over? Consequences should be natural or logical. Okay. Consequences can be positive, negative, or both. We learn from both. So let's talk about the difference between natural and logical consequences. So if you think about a natural consequence, this is something that has to happen. It will happen as a result of their behavior or their choice. It will happen. So for example, natural, if you touch the hot burner, naturally, you're going to burn your hand. Okay. If the person stays up all night, okay, and then they sleep in the morning, naturally, they're going to miss the bus. okay? Or the kid that leaves their bike outside overnight while it's raining. Naturally, the bike's going to get wet. Naturally, it will happen. All right, let's talk logical consequences. Logical consequences don't necessarily have to happen. They don't occur naturally. It's something that the caregiver or the parent kind of plans out to teach them not to display the behavior again. For example, okay, let's say the child was asked not to ride their bike in the street. Child starts riding their bike in the street. Well, the logical consequence is the bike is put away for the rest of the night to teach the child what happens if they don't listen. Going back to leaving the bicycle out overnight, you know, a logical consequence is, well, it could get stolen. Okay, not logically, it could get stolen, which will hopefully teach the child, don't leave your bike out. You have to lock your bike up because this is what could happen. Okay. Now, on that diagram that we were looking at earlier, we noticed that the behavioral model, it goes from left to right. We had the antecedent, the precursor, the behavior, the calm down, and then the consequence. Now, it does not mean that it always has to flow that way. Okay, so we're going to actually go over a couple scenarios together to see what we can do to kind of manipulate that, that diagram. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is just listen very carefully to a scenario that I'm going to share with you. You're going to be listening for the before, during, and after stages of that behavioral model. So again, the antecedent, that's the cause, the precursor, those happen in the before. Those are the warnings, the little mini behaviors that they do. And then remember, we also have the behavior that's in this diagram. The behavior is the thing that we're trying to prevent. Okay. And then you have the calm down where they come back into control. And then you also have the consequence stage. So if we can go ahead and flip over to this scenario here. Okay. Here's what we got. All right. It says, Mary is a very quiet individual on your van who pretty much keeps to herself. She is sitting quietly playing her portable video game. All of a sudden, Johnny, who is sitting right behind her, unbuckles his seatbelt and stands up and reaches over the seat and takes her game. She gets tears in her eyes. She starts to rock back and forth while mumbling to herself, "Oh, Johnny, I can't stand him. Why does he always have to be so mean to me?" She then unbuckles her seatbelt, reaches behind her seat, hits Johnny, and takes the game back, then goes back to playing the game. So let's kind of break this down. Okay. And I'm going to open up the chat again. Okay. What was Mary's antecedent? So what was the cause of her behavior? What was the cause?
Someone in the chat said Johnny took the game.
Perfect. Yeah, that was the antecedent. That was the cause. Now, the precursor, how could you tell that she was becoming upset? What were those warnings she did?
Rocking.
That's one.
Rocking and mumbling.
Okay. She was also starting to get tears in her eyes as well. So rocking, mumbling, tearing up. What was Mary's behavior? What was the action?
Hit John and took the game back.
Very good. And then what was the calm down? What was the de-escalation period? What did she go back to doing?
Doreen Marsha said playing her game.
Perfect. And then the consequence. What happened as a result of Mary hitting Johnny? What did she get?
Marsha said she got her game back.
Perfect. Some satisfaction. Absolutely. So thank you guys for that feedback. So this behavior, it worked for her. So the chance of her doing it again is very high because she got what she wanted. Now, we know it may not work out so well next time. You know, Johnny could have gotten up and hit her back. Now we have a fight breaking out on the van. So we want to try and prevent this behavior from happening. So reviewing this again, the antecedent, Johnny took Mary's game. That was the cause. Precursor, Mary was rocking, mumbling, and was tearing up. Her behavior, Mary hit Johnny and took her game back. Calm down. Well, she continued playing her game. And then the consequence, what did she get out of hitting Johnny? Well, she got her game back. So let's break it down even further, okay? Starting with the before stage. Let's say you, as the driver, you look in your rearview mirror and you see Johnny standing up on the van. Or if you're the ride along and you see Johnny unbuckling his seatbelt. As the staff, what could you do when you see Johnny unbuckle or start to stand up in the vehicle? What would you do in this moment? What could you do?
People said redirect. Tell John, please sit down. The van is moving, and pull over if needed.
Okay. Yeah, those are excellent ideas. So let's elaborate a little bit here, okay, on some of those examples. So as far as just acknowledging him, noticing that he's either unbuckling or he's starting to stand up, we can maybe ask him something that will kind of show him that you see him. You know, it could deter his next move, just noticing that you notice. We also heard just calmly asking him to sit back down, you know, and if you have a good rapport with Johnny, maybe that will work. Another thing we can do is think quick. All right. Let everyone on the van know, hey guys, I see a bump coming up here. Just to make sure everyone is safe, I want to make sure that everyone's sitting down. So maybe that'll distract him from what he's about to do. I mean, it's worth a try, but you're not putting it directly on him. You're making it about everyone. I also heard in the chat here to redirect him, distract him, you know, ask him a question. It could be a question about the hat that he's wearing. You know, hey, Johnny, I noticed that you're wearing a Phoenix Suns hat. Wow, that's a really cool hat. How have the Phoenix Suns been doing lately? You know, let me give you an example of how I used redirection, okay, for one of the individuals. So one of the individuals that I was working with, I knew he liked to play a game called Roblox. All right. I distracted him by asking him first off, I asked him, you know, if he'd ever played a game called Bed Wars. He said, yes. I said, great. Can I ask you for some advice? He said, yeah. Now, already he's distracted in conversation with me. So I told him, I said, my 9-year-old son was asking if he could play that game Bed Wars, but I haven't really given him an answer yet. Mind you, I have already Googled it. I have already tried playing it myself, and I knew this was not a game that I was going to allow my son to play, but he didn't know that. So I was asking this gentleman, you know, do you think this is an appropriate game for his age group on Roblox? And he's like, actually, no, it's not. So he was telling me a little bit about the game. Okay. Now, like I said, I already knew. But the thing is, I was asking for his advice, and it kind of just redirected his whole thought process on what he was about to do. And he was helping me out with some basic information. So, you know, getting to know the individual can really help you to redirect situations before it goes any further. Now, let's say it got to the point where, you know, he was grabbing the game. Okay. Now you as the ride along, you know, you may talk to him. Better yet, talk to Mary. Okay. I think it's important that we calm Mary down at this point. Granted, we will address this with Johnny for taking the game, but the bottom line right now is Johnny's fine. It's Mary that we need to try and calm down. Okay. So if you're driving and you see him grab the game, you know, again, you could just acknowledge that you saw him take it. You could distract Mary in another game like I Spy, something like that, to distract her until you can pull the van over safely, you know, to kind of handle it. Bottom line, again, you want to get to Mary to calm her down because she is the one that's upset in this moment. Now, those are just some ideas that we could do in that antecedent stage. But let's say you, the driver, you, the ride along, you didn't see him, you know, grab the game, right? The driver was busy looking at the road. The ride along was looking out the window. Suddenly you notice Mary rocking and mumbling to herself. I mean, does she look okay? No. So this is the time to get in there. Mary, what's wrong? Let me pull the van over. We can talk, see what's going on. Try to distract her with conversation. You know, if she tells you what's wrong, then you can assure her that you'll take care of it once you pull the van over. You just want to start talking with Mary now. You want to do what you can to calm her down before it goes any further. But we didn't see the precursor either. Okay, you just saw Mary reach behind her seat, hit him, and take the game. Now it kind of looks like she started the whole thing, right? So if you remember that behavioral model, okay, remember we said that the arrows go from left to right, okay? Again, antecedent, precursor, behavior, calm down, consequence, but it doesn't always have to. If you can catch it in the antecedent or precursor stage, we do have a good chance of preventing the behavior from happening. You go from the antecedent straight across to the consequence. Okay, we want to help them calm before the inappropriate behavior occurs. So taking deep breaths, counting to 10, listening to music, talking about it, playing a game. Now, this is important. I cannot promise that in every situation, if you catch it in the antecedent or precursor stage, I cannot promise that it will always prevent the behavior. I cannot promise that. But what I can promise is if you do nothing in the antecedent stage, nothing in the precursor stage, the behavior is going to happen every time. The goal here is to get Mary's game back without her hitting anyone. So if you talk to her in the antecedent or precursor stage and then talk with Johnny, you do have a good chance of preventing that behavior. Either way, the consequence stays the same. Either she hits him to get the game back, or you intervene before she hits him. Either way, the consequence is the same. She gets the need met. She gets the game back. Okay, it can be up to us on how we handle how that happens. Does she hit him, or do we prevent it in the before stage when noticing the warning signs that it's about to happen? Or do we just sit back and watch? We don't want to do that. Okay. Remember when I said again, that behavioral cycle, it applies to everyone. It's true. So we're actually going to talk about another experience. Again, listening for the before, during, and after. Okay. So here's our scenario. You guys know, my name is Heather. Something you don't know is I love to scrapbook. Okay. I love to try new foods. I love all kinds of music. I have 2 children. I have a 16-year-old daughter and a 9-year-old son. Still trying to get used to that whole 16 thing. So it's big age. The night before, okay, I let my son use my cell phone to play some games. He took the phone to his room and I forgot that he had it. He fell asleep. I fell asleep. The next morning, guess what I did not have? Well, you know, I am living in a 2023 world, so I don't actually own an alarm clock. I depend on my phone for that alarm. So you guessed it, no alarm. I wake up late, okay? I wake up about 15 minutes after my alarm would have gone off. I'm rushing around the house, trying to get ready. I was moving so fast that I left the house without grabbing my coffee. It's sitting on the counter. I have no time to go back for it. As I'm driving to work, I look in my rearview mirror and I notice that I am being tailgated. I speed up, he stays on me. I slow down, he stays on me. I start to clench the steering wheel. I start mumbling some choice words under my breath. I look again in my rearview mirror and I see that he is about to take a drink of his coffee. As he's doing this motion, I hit the brake. I look again in the rear view and I notice this because he spilled the coffee all over himself. Okay. I chuckled and he backed off. Okay. So there's your whole model. So let's break this one down. Okay. If we can, let's go to the next slide, please. Okay. Let's break it down. All right. The model applies to everyone. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the antecedent. Again, the cause, what sets the behavior in motion. So in this scenario, first thing that happened is I let my son use my phone the night before. Okay. So I had no alarm in the morning, which caused me to be late. I ran out of the house so fast, I forgot my coffee. And if you notice on the screen there, that's caps locked. Okay. No coffee. That's a huge one for me. Okay. No caffeine. Okay. I'm driving down the road and I see that I'm being tailgated. These are all the setting events. These are the causes that's setting the behavior in motion. Now, looking here on the precursor, how could you tell I was becoming upset? Again, this is still in the before stage. I started speeding up, slowing down. I was changing my speeds. I was clenching the steering wheel. I was mumbling some choice words. Those are all those warnings that it's about to go down. What was my behavior? The action I took? Well, I brake checked him. What was the consequence? What did I get out of brake checking this person? Well, he spilled his coffee. I laughed a little bit and he backed off. Now, this behavior that I just did, it worked. I got what I wanted. I wanted him to stop tailgating me. I did the behavior and it worked. Now, just like with Mary, okay, yes, it worked. So the likelihood is that I'm going to do it again. But again, just like Mary, it may not have worked out so well. Okay, I could have been rear-ended. He could have caught up with me at the next light with some road rage. This may not work out so great next time. So we want to do what we can to try and prevent this behavior. We don't want it to happen. Okay, so I'm going to open up the chat again. Let's say you were riding in the passenger seat next to me. Okay, we're on our way to work and all of a sudden you start to feel the car changing speeds. All right, you can see me clenching the steering wheel. You can see me get off my, I'm mumbling some words, right? You also notice my eyes. I keep looking up at the rear view mirror. Okay, I don't look okay right now. You're seeing these behavior changes in me. Now, as the passenger, what could you do to help to, let's just say, prevent what's about to come? What would you do for me?
Lahara said, let's pull into a Starbucks. I'm buying. Marsha said, Heather, could we get some coffee? I feel like I need some Java. What'd you say?
I love it.
Suggest a lane change if possible.
Okay. I understand, us in this workshop today, we really haven't had the opportunity to meet like in person. You don't know a whole lot about me, but based off of what you have learned from the very beginning of this workshop to now, what could you distract me in with conversation? Just based off of what you know.
Talking about billboards we're passing and talking about the music.
Okay. So let's take that one. Let's take music, right? Maybe, hey, Heather, have you been to any concerts lately? I heard this person's coming to town. You got tickets yet? Or even just music, the radio. So let's say we have my passenger and they turn on the radio, and let's say that song, who sings Meghan Trainor, the All About That Bass. Let's say this person turns it on and my passenger is there, starts singing all about that bass, no trouble. And I'm looking at them and I'm like, really? I'm like, this is your song? This person over here is like, heck yeah, I love this song. And I'm like, okay, little bit of judgment. However, it's kind of still a catchy song. Now, all of a sudden I'm sitting here singing along with it because deep down, we won't admit this out loud, but I like the song a little bit. I'm singing, you know, I'm laughing, I'm distracted. Okay, music is a great distractor. Okay, I really like the people that say, hey, let's get some Java. There's a QT up the road. I'm buying. All right, cool. Get me off the road, because then I pull over, the tailgater's gone. You know, maybe you need to use the bathroom. That would be something, and you're not even bringing up the tailgater at all. Hey, Heather, can we stop real quick? I need to use the restroom. You know, oh wait, I hear a hissing in the tire. You know, can we pull over and check it? You know, you can ask me if I want to maybe switch lanes. You just got to be really careful depending on who's in the vehicle with you, because a lot of people, they don't like to be told how to drive. You know what I mean? So that may anger the person. But again, if you have a rapport with the person, absolutely, just move over, you know, let him go. He's obviously in a hurry. Okay, let's stop and get some coffee, what have you, you know, just trying different things, you know, things I mentioned. I'm into scrapbooking. Hey, I know your daughter just turned 16. Did you do that scrapbook page on her birthday party? You know, no, not yet. Now I'm conversating about that. You got that workshop coming up on Friday. You ready for it? You know, that just whatever. Distract me in conversation. That's a good thing that we can try to do. The bottom line is we're trying to prevent the behavior as you're buckling your seatbelt, you know. So the whole model here, I'm really hoping that it's kind of helped some of you understand the sequence of that behavior. Okay. And hopefully it may be able to help you prevent emergencies in the future. Okay. That's the whole point: before, during, after. Catch it in the before stage, you know, the antecedents, what upset them, and then also those precursors, those warnings. And then hopefully we can nip it then to prevent that behavior. That's the whole point. Go straight across, right to the calm down and the consequence. That's the goal. Okay. And I will tell you this, getting to know the individual and why they do some of the things that they do, it really helps to put this model at work. Okay. All right. On the next slide, what we're going to get into right now is avoiding conflict in the vehicle. Okay. So to help us understand why conflict may even begin on the transit vehicle, we need to look at some of the things that most passengers are expecting from the transit service, okay? Because if the passenger is unsatisfied, that may lead them to becoming angry and taking it out on you, the driver. Okay, so let's talk about some of these examples of sources. All right, so the first one that we have here is reliability. Passengers want to know that they can rely on your transit system to get them where they're going on time. Cleanliness and comfort. Passengers also expect their mode of transportation and the transit facilities that they use to be clean and comfortable. Friendliness and empathy. Your passengers expect to feel that your transit system cares about their needs, is willing to listen and answer their questions, and doesn't ignore their concerns. So now what we're going to discuss are some of the important de-escalation strategies to have when dealing with conflict. Okay, this could be passenger against driver. This could be passenger against passenger. Okay, so the first de-escalation strategy that we're gonna talk about is communication. So if we could go to the next slide, please. On the next slide. Perfect. Thank you. All right. So communication. We've been talking about this almost the whole class, right? Communication is important when we're interacting with our passengers. That's just a given. How you communicate and the ways that you communicate can help de-escalate conflict. The three basic aspects of communication are body language, tone of voice, and word choice. Remember to find out the best communication method for your passenger. The second one that we have here is situational awareness. This is basically knowing what is going on around you and staying vigilant to any changes or threats. Using situational awareness, it will help you to recognize and read the indicators of difficult passengers, as well as just being mindful of your own stress responses. When you recognize your own stress response, it can help you better maintain your self-control and composure, and not allow yourself to become provoked. I mean, that's the goal. The next one on the next slide is calming approach. It says when the passengers are challenged, they often raise the level of their voice. Out of instinct, you may be tempted to try to meet them where they are by raising your voice, but you will find that keeping a neutral tone of voice consistently throughout the heated or hostile encounter may effectively help you to diffuse the situation. The next one is informing behavior. This involves making statements that let the irate passenger know what's going on without using the terms you must or you should messages. So I want to kind of talk a little bit on that, using those terms. So examples of informing behavior that don't include must or you should. So let's see, if seatbelt. If you have a passenger that will not put on their seatbelt, okay, let them know. I mean, you can be upfront with them that this is a company policy. This is not just my personal rule. You know, I cannot move this vehicle until everyone has their seatbelt buckled. Also, don't order or command the passenger to do something. Sometimes just providing information can help to de-escalate the situation. So another thing that you could do is avoid using the word you need to sit down, like you putting it on them. We want to try to refrain from using that. You need to sit down. You need to put on your seatbelt. Instead, you may say something like, hey, everyone, I can't see out of my mirrors. Can everyone please have a seat? You know, just kind of making it about everyone and not just about that one person, because when we tend to call out one specific person, it tends to embarrass them. So my approach is always, hey, everybody, you know, can everyone have a seat? And hopefully that one person will kind of get the hint of, oh, you know, I'm standing up, because sometimes they may not even realize that they're being disruptive, but just kind of making it aware or making them aware can help. The next one, ask for more information, okay? Ask the person something along the lines of, what else? What else is frustrating you about this situation? Doing so helps to ensure that the other person can get every bit of tension off of their mind. You know, if they have additional information to add, be sure to use this mirroring technique, which we're going to talk about here in just a minute. The next one is validate a person. This one's huge. Okay, validation. This is the recognition and acceptance of another person's thoughts, feelings, sensations, and behaviors as understandable. Okay. Have you guys ever had someone say something along the lines of, don't be mad, or there's no reason to be upset. Get over it. You're stressing over nothing. Just calm down. That in most cases, those statements can actually make the situation worse, because as I said earlier, our feelings, they belong to us. Being told to feel or not to feel a certain way is very different than someone actually validating that what you're feeling right now, that's real. Okay? Keep in mind that feelings and opinions, they're neither right or wrong. They're just information. To validate someone's feelings does not necessarily mean that you agree with what they're saying. You don't have to take the blame. We just have to accept the fact that the person is feeling a certain way. Again, we don't have to agree with them, but we accept it. So an example of validation, you know, instead of saying you need to calm down, get over it, you're stressing over nothing. Or my very favorite, you see my favorite, why do you let the little things bother you? Okay, that right there, again, just shuts the person down. Okay, so some examples of validation. Instead of saying those, you could say something like, yeah, it makes sense that you're feeling this way. Or looking at it from your perspective, yeah, I'd probably feel the same way. That must be frustrating. I'm sorry that you're going through this. Is there anything I can do to help? That right there is validating that the emotion that they're feeling right now, it's real. Okay, because the way that I look at this, if I go and I vent something to someone, maybe I'm venting for 5 full minutes of something that's going on in my life. And that person says, man, Heather, that's not even a big deal. You're going to be fine. That's going to shut me down. That's going to break communication, right? I'm not going to want to express feelings to you if you're just going to shut me down, saying it's not a big deal, stressing over nothing. So again, we want to validate, again, that must be frustrating. I'm sorry you're going through that. Now, the thing that I'm venting to that person, maybe they've gone through it 20 times in their lives. So to them, it's not a big deal. But for me, going through this for the first time, yeah, it is a big deal. And I would appreciate just to be validated. Okay. All right. Now, of course, when it comes to this, we want to listen to understand what the passenger is communicating. Okay. We don't want to interrupt them. We do want to let them vent. However, if the person is going on and it sounds like they're kind of repeating themselves, you may let them know it. You know what I mean? Let them know, you've already said that. Is there any new information that you would like to tell me? I do have to continue on with the route. I have to get everyone home, just kind of, again, validating that feeling that they're having. But again, sometimes they may keep going. All right. Speaking of keep going, let's keep going. The next one that we're going to talk about is just listening. And I know I heard this in the chat earlier as far as active listening. Okay, that's a great way to form a relationship and communicate. This is typically the most challenging step, though, especially during a heated debate. Yet it is critical to let the other person share all of their thoughts about the issue at hand. Now, reflective or active listening shows the passenger that you heard them. The tactic is to acknowledge an angry passenger's feelings and appear empathetic to what they're feeling. Often people, they just want to be acknowledged. They want to feel that they were heard. The next one is mirroring what you hear. Whereas interrupting and raising your voice will definitely increase the anger of the other person, the act of mirroring kind of diffuses it. Mirroring is repeating what you heard so that the other person, again, feels heard. Okay. So what I'm hearing is that you're upset because she's sitting in your seat. That could be a good example. This way they know that you understand why they're feeling the way that they feel. So another example of active listening is basically paraphrasing what you just heard to get that understanding. The next one on the list is going to be empathize. I know we've already kind of talked about this one a little bit, but let's elaborate a little bit more on empathy. Now, a close cousin to the validation is empathy. All right. Empathy seeks to understand what another is feeling. Empathizing is an essential final step before we start to try to resolve the conflict in a more tangible, direct manner. Okay, thank you. All right, so let's go ahead and continue on. So the next one on our list is going to be, it's something called opening behavior. This is when you ask the angry passenger questions that allow them to open up and express themselves. Human beings are sometimes, we purposely draw attention to ourselves, even negative attention, just to be seen or heard. Asking the passenger questions can make them feel acknowledged, and at the same time, it tends to interrupt the violent, thought patterns. By asking open questions, you are allowing them to, that chance to address their feelings and get back into control themselves. You know, some examples of some open-ended questions that we can ask the person who may be starting to become upset or whatever emotion they're feeling. You could just simply ask them, can I help you? You know, do you need something? How are you doing today? What do you need? What do you think about what I'm saying? So it kind of gives them that opportunity to think about kind of what's going on, and it actually shows that you're there ready to listen and acknowledge that they are going through something at this moment. Okay. The next one on the list is going to be ask to respond. Now it's your turn. Okay, to answer with your perspective. Be sure to use positive body language, tone of voice, and word choices during this part so that the other person will not feel inclined to defend themselves. Posture, body language includes smiling, direct eye contact, frequent head nods. Positive voice tone consists of using a calm, slow, deliberate, and kind voice tone, just to show the person that you are listening. Okay. You can also use reflective statements with an informing statement to calm a passenger who is angry. Because let's say the vehicle's late. Okay. So that is sending an emotion through their body. Okay, we want to show empathy and validate the feeling that they're angry. For example, saying something like, I understand that you are frustrated because you might be late for work, so I will do my best to get you there safely and on time. So again, listening and then trying to help to problem solve just to let them know you've been heard. Okay. All right, next up, reducing escalation tactics. This is what we're going to go into right now. So in order to maintain a calm demeanor, you must first, be calm yourself. Take a deep breath. Think about what you're doing before you react or speak with the passenger. Don't get defensive and take a threatening stance, even if the passenger is insulting you directly. Ask yourself some questions about the situation. Are they being disruptive by yelling or bullying someone? Are they refusing to comply with the rules? These are just some signs that may mean that the situation could be escalating. So what are we supposed to do? Do understand that if you act aggressively, you will only make the situation worse. So try to handle, the situation maybe from the driver's seat. This is going to create less aggressive, body language, your stance, and you're also avoiding the other person's personal space. So I always tell my staff here, just if there is something going on, try to stay kind of in the front, sitting, so you're more at their level. Now, granted, if it gets a little bit more out of control, you may have to change that body language a little bit, but staying calm is going to be critical. All right, let's talk about some additional tactics to help reduce escalation. Some of them can be, I believe this is going to be on the next slide, please. Yes, respect. That's a given. Treating every passenger with respect. No one likes to be embarrassed, humiliated, or intimidated. A common reason that people act out of violence is because they feel humiliated. Okay, so of course we want to use the golden rule. Okay, that's that whole do unto others as you want done unto you. So treat people how you would want to be treated, with respect and dignity. Now, that's the golden rule. But we cannot forget the platinum rule. Okay, so we know the golden rule is treat people how you want to be treated, with dignity, respect, compassion, all that good stuff. That's the golden rule. The platinum rule, I'm going to treat people how they want to be treated. So if I'm working with someone who, maybe shares a lot of the same common interests as I do, we've got a lot in common. Well, of course, I'm going to treat them with respect and dignity, of course. But the fact of the matter is, just because we share some of the same characteristics, there could be some different things that they may choose that I would not. So when I say the platinum rule, I'm going to treat that person how they want to be treated. Okay. Now, for example, some of the passengers that you pick up in the morning, they may enjoy conversation. As to other folks, maybe appreciate that silence. So again, treating them how they would want to be treated. If this person wants silence, I'm going to give it to them. Okay. Remember to speak clearly and calmly. I believe, yeah, this is on the same one. Perfect. So speaking clearly and calmly and using that repetition. So if your transit vehicle is like equipped with cameras, you may consider letting the passenger know that they are being recorded if you do think it will help diffuse the situation, but never be surprised or caught off guard if the passenger overreacts. Just remain as calm as you can at all times. All right. Let's go ahead and let's just talk about what do we do if the de-escalation strategies are not working. So everything that we've already talked about in this workshop are all ways to try to prevent any type of aggressive behavior happening on the vehicle. So let's get into what do we do if all of that doesn't work, okay? If the situation is becoming dangerous, you're going to need to contact dispatch or base or however you call it. Okay. Now, there are a few points I want to bring up about contacting, your dispatch, your supervisor. Okay. If your vehicle is equipped with a panic button or silent alarm, this may be the time that you're going to want to, push that alarm. If you don't have a silent alarm, your agency may want to consider establishing a verbal emergency code that cannot be understood by the difficult passenger, but dispatch or base would know that you need a supervisor, you need law enforcement, you need help at this moment. In the absence of a silent alarm or verbal emergency code, you do need to be careful about what you say and how you say it when you call in to request assistance. You want to know how you're going to notify dispatch. You're going to tell them your location. If the vehicle is not equipped with the GPS, let them know where you are. It is important to note your request and or notification to dispatch could further escalate the individual. Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit more on what do we do there. If the authorities need to be called, we're just going to go over a few tips for what to say when talking to the dispatcher. So we have here, call 911 away from the individual if you can, because your safety is as important as the individual and others that are in your vehicle. If he or she might become agitated or feel threatened by overhearing your call, you want to pull the van over, ask others to step out while you call 911 away from this distraught passenger. You may ask the police to even arrive with their lights and sirens turned off. Speak to 911 dispatcher in a calm, clear, and controlled manner as you can. This will help the trained professional best administer the correct resource and level of response to help you. You want to give your name, location. I just say stick to the facts of what you've seen or have been told. Tell the dispatcher what is happening now. Give them some information about the person. And this is important too, especially transporting folks who have different disabilities or behavioral health issues. Give them some information. I have someone on my vehicle that has autism. They're nonverbal, they're deaf, they're wielding a weapon or not wielding a weapon. The more information that you can give the dispatcher, the better that they're going to be able to come in and assist in this situation. Okay. You want to stay on the line. Let's go ahead and flip to the next slide, please. Yeah, stay on the line. While on the phone with the dispatcher, just remember that emergency help is being dispatched. So while you're staying on the line, if they ask you to do so, it's not going to delay the help from responding. So they're already sending someone out while they're keeping you on the phone. Now, the Phoenix Police Department, they do have several hundred CIT, which is crisis intervention, trained officers working as first responders. They are specifically trained police officers and civilian employees committed to assisting persons with mental illnesses and other brain disorders. So the CIT officer, they're trained with skills that can help minimize the risk to responding to someone in crisis. Okay, they go through a very detailed training on how to approach people who have let's say bipolar disorder or schizophrenia, or if they are deaf, they may have an officer that speaks fluent sign that can come in and actually communicate with that person. So again, giving them that information, it's considered a need to know, so they can come in and provide the best care here. Next slide, please. It is okay to ask for the CIT officer, okay? This program, it is a service to the community, so don't be afraid to use it if you need to. If you find yourself in a situation where you need to call law enforcement to intervene with the person experiencing a mental health crisis, again, it is okay to call. Usually that's going to be your last case scenario. You want to make sure the supervisor, director, they're all notified of what's going on. Okay. But if it's an immediate emergency where you're not able to, control this situation, you may have to do, make this phone call. Okay. The last lesson that we're going to discuss in this workshop today is going to be positioning your vehicle. Okay. If your vehicle is stationary, don't move it, and make sure the doors are open. This allows the dangerous passenger or other passengers and yourself to get off the vehicle if needed. If you are driving when you determine the situation has turned dangerous and you are in a populated area, you could pull the vehicle off the road into a safe location, such as a gas station, small community, rest area, and open all the doors. This is going to allow you to stop the vehicle where there may be other people around that may be able to assist you if you need it. Now, one thing I do want to say with this, as far as where we pull over, I'm just going to throw this out there. It's never safe to pull over on the freeway. Okay. And I know that sounds obvious, but we have had situations where the person pulls over on the freeway. And of course, the individual absconds, goes running, and there's traffic. So I don't know if we have anyone in this workshop today that does work under the DDD, but I'm just going to talk about this for a moment. If we do have someone that works for the DDD, or, you may have taken a class called prevention and support. Okay. If you are current in your certification, you may use what we call the vehicle restraint if there is a danger to anyone on that vehicle right now. Okay. This can only be done in the vehicle that cannot be evacuated. So again, if you've taken that training, prevention and support, you know exactly what I'm talking about. We just want to limit physical, confrontation there when possible. Okay. All right. Let's see here. Another thing I want to talk about is where we're doing transport at. Some of you may provide services that take you into a very rural area or remote location. As you know, it may take some time for the supervisor or law enforcement to get there. Okay. In this type of a situation, you're just going to have to rely on your experience and just common sense to protect you and your passengers. Now, if all else fails, recognize that stopping and exiting the vehicle to avoid confrontation, calling authorities, or disengaging from a conflict is safer than engaging with someone physically. Okay. But I just kind of want to talk about your agency's procedures. You guys work for the company. They give you additional training on how to handle conflict with passengers and how to respond to potentially dangerous situations. So if your agency does have those specifics, absolutely, you're going to learn about that as well. Okay. It's essential for the transporter of people with disabilities to be familiar with the characteristics of their passengers. Okay. It is important to remember that the people that we are transporting who have developmental disabilities or physical limitations, we have to remember that they're individuals first. Okay. And that descriptions of specific categories of disability do not apply to all the same extent of people within that disability category. Okay, I'm trying to think of how I want to word this. You could be, here it is. You could be supporting two people, okay, who share the same disability. But it's important to understand that just because they may share some of the same characteristics of that disability, they're all unique in their own way. Okay, so getting to know the individual as a person is very important. Another thing I like to talk about here, just to kind of end this up, is if you are going to be transporting someone who, let's say, has autism or cerebral palsy or epilepsy, we do have another workshop that I offer for MAG as well that goes over introduction, transporting passengers with special needs. But I always say too, go home and Google it, read books, get as much information on the individuals that you can. But then again, you could read all day long on autism. If you have Johnny and Joe on your vehicle that both share the same diagnosis, they're on the spectrum, you've got to get to know them on an individual level, because I guarantee they are going to be unique in their own way, getting to know different things. Okay. So this training today, it was designed to discuss some general information on how to recognize a challenging behavior before it occurs. We covered de-escalation strategies when transporting individuals who have special needs and what you may do in an emergency. Now, I understand that there is no one size fits all when it comes to transporting passengers who may display inappropriate or destructive behavior. But I am hoping that this information that I provided today will help you in assisting in the safety of your passengers. So with that said, this is where I'm going to conclude. And I just want to say thank you for letting me be here today and speak at this workshop. And as always, just review your organization's policies on safe driving, things that are relevant to the job. So again, thank you.
Thank you, Heather. And thank you everybody who attended today's workshop. And the thanks are also coming from the chat to you, Heather. If you have any questions, this is the last chance for you to put it in the chat or to unmute yourself and ask the questions to Heather right now. I do want to, yes, the PowerPoint will be made available on the workshops website. So if you just put on Google, MAG transportation workshops, you'll be able to find it. But if you still can't find it, you can always just email me, and I can get you the link for the workshop website. And I'm putting in the chat right now my email if you need to email me. Once you close this meeting, you will be redirected to a feedback survey. Please fill out that survey. That helps us build this and all the workshops and understand what you want to see next. Also, if you want a certificate of attendance for this workshop, please send me an email on the email in the chat, and I will get you a certificate of attendance as well. With that said, I don't see any questions on the chat, and nobody unmuted themselves as well. So with that, thank you so much, everybody. Thank you so much, Heather. This was great, and have a wonderful weekend, everybody.
Thank you.